Okay, Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Okay, so last time when we were learning the holy words of the Rabbi Alshech HaKadosh, we talked about the end of the first verse of Bereshit that says, the heavens and the earth, es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. And we talked about all the things that were included within heavens and within the earth. And we talked about the nature. This is a theme that has been coming up a lot, and it will come up a lot, how the nature of creation was such that everything somehow existed in the most ethereal level of potentiality in the first moment of creation. Meaning everything that was that came to follow was initially in the first moment. And then how, depending on that particular detail of existence, how physical it had to become, then there were successive stages and levels of manifestation. That was one of the concepts that we talked about last time. Okay, so the piece that we're going to do now, it's a relatively short piece. It's on the second verse of Bereshit. Okay, so let's start it. It's basically, this is going to be a discussion of how inherently in the primordial element of mayim, of water, in Bereshit, there was already inherently within it both qualities of spirituality and physicality. Meaning ultimately what started off in its purest form as mayim ends up becoming the duality of both physicality and spirituality. We'll see. Okay, so first, because this is a commentary on the Chumash, it's good to look in the pasuk. Okay, so the pasuk says, "V'ha'aretz haisa tohu vavo." So read just the last, right? It says, "Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz." It mentions heavens and earth, and now we continue with the description of the earth. "V'ha'aretz haisa sohu vavo," and the earth was sohu vavo. There's different ways of explaining it, but basically we'll say, for the purposes of this reading, emptiness and nothingness. V'choshech al pnei sehom, and darkness was on the face of the depths. V'ruach Elohim, and the Spirit of God, merachefes al pnei hamayim, hovered over the face of the waters. Okay, so this is a very mysterious pasuk, but one thing worthy of pointing out is that it's describing the fact that there is both, the first half of the pasuk says that there's darkness on the face of the abyss, al pnei tehom, on the face of the abyss. And then it says, and the Spirit of God was hovering over Pnei Hamayim, the face of the waters. So you have the face of the abyss and the face of the waters. Now, what is the face of the waters and what is the face of the abyss? So Rashi, right away, he says when it says on the face of the abyss, Al Pnei Tehom, Al Pnei Hamayim Sha'al Haaretz, on the face of the waters that are upon the earth. So according to Rashi, basically we're reading on the face of the abyss means on the face of the waters. And on the face of the waters also means on the face of the waters. Okay? So that's the intro for the remarks of the Alshech. Meaning, why is it that if indeed both the abyss and the water are referring to the waters, why does it refer to them in different ways? What's the significance? What's going on? Okay. Zok the Heilige Alshech. Okay. Hine yira'eh, she'amro al pnei hamayim, ve'amro al pnei tehom echadu. Behold, it's seen, where we can understand how when the verse says al pnei hamayim, on the face of the waters, and later on the face of the abyss, al pnei tehom, it's referring to the same thing, echadu. V'kasha, and this is difficult. Shelama ze yeshna shemam. Why refer to the same thing by two different names? Why change the name? Amnam. Hine amru rabbeinu zal beBereshis Rabbah. However, our masters have taught us in Bereshis Rabbah, ki mitchila haya ha'olam mayim b'mayim. Initially, the world was in a state of waters within waters, mayim b'mayim. V'gila hakadosh baruch hu tipa emtzait, and God sort of revealed or pulled out a drop from the middle, ubaret hashamayim mimena, and created the heavens from that. V'nisharu chetzi hamayim me'al larakia, and half of the remaining water was me'al, from above larakia, to the rakia, meaning above the firmament. V'chetziam, and the other half lamata, beneath the firmament. So that's the medrash. V'hine ro'i lasim lev, it's it's worthwhile to pay attention, to take note. El lashon amra mayim b'mayim, that they said water within water. Shenira ki shnei minei mayim hayu. When you say water within water, that seems to connote two different types of waters, right? Ve'od, and furthermore, Amram, Shigila Tipa and Tzais, it says that God revealed a middle drop, a drop of the water from the middle. Lama haya me'an tzait, why was it from the middle? Ve'lo mimashe lamalo lamata. Why didn't he just, Hashem, so to speak, use the water that was already above, half above the rakia to make the heavens? Ve'od, and furthermore, she'im kein nimtza yesod hamayim me'al rakia, that if the element of water was already above the rakia, it's strange to think that that the water which is physical should be above the heavens. I'm going to recap and paraphrase. And also, why would our masters when they said in Bereshit Rabbah, Shemei Amro Hamayim Asher Me'al Rakia, the pasuk says the water that is above from the firmament. Velo amar she'al harakia, and it doesn't say above the firmament. It says la rakia, to the firmament, as opposed to harakia, the firmament. Why did it say and to the water that was above to the firmament, as opposed to saying above the firmament? Ki harakia be'emtza, because the firmament, this middle dividing entity between the waters, the upper waters and the lower waters, is in the middle. Umeharakia alehem, and from the firmament and above, kishiur mashimimayim atachtonim el rakia, is the same amount as the water that is below. So he's pointing out that when it says la rakia, to the rakia, it's to indicate that it was in the middle, that the same amount that was from the rakia and above was from the rakia and below. V'halo yikshe, and one could ask, lama lo yerdu v'yiplo al rakia, this physical water above the rakia, why did it not fall and collapse on top of the rakia, v'yishbechu sivivo, and spill out around it, ad mitachas rakia, to the waters below, underneath the rakia? Okay, so in order to explain, once again, we start off with a question. If the face of the depths and the face of the waters, Pnei Tahom and Pnei Al Pnei Amayim, are the same thing, why does the pasuk differentiate? And in order to understand this, the Alshech HaKadosh, he brings a midrash, he quotes Chazal that say that when God was creating the heavens, it seems to describe that there was already waters above the firmament and waters below the firmament, but it characterizes reality as water within water. And God takes a middle drop, and from that pulls it out and makes the heavens. Well, if the rest of the water was physical before God made the heavens, and there was physical water above the rakia, why didn't it collapse on the rakia? So he's posing all these questions to kind of analyze the midrash, and let's see where we go. These words need wide explanation. We actually discussed this Bereshit Rabbah in our explanation of Bereshit Rabbah. Achpo, however, here bikotzer nimratz, with concision and shortness, nomar. He's going to reiterate in a short way and explain. Shehu ki yesh shnei sugei mayim. The punchline is like this: there's actually two types of waters. When it says that the world was mayim b'mayim, water within water, it's referring to two different types of water. Ha'echad shel ruchaniyut, one is of a spiritual nature, she'aleim haya ruach Elohim merachefes, and that's the water that's referred to in the pasuk as al hamayim, that the Spirit of God hovered over. V'chol hakarev el ruach Elohim hayu yoser ruchaniyim. Okay, so imagine like this: you have water, and it's divided precisely in the middle by a rakia, and the upper waters are actually waters of a spiritual nature, and the waters underneath, we'll say, are of a physical nature. And from the rakia and above till the Spirit of God is basically a continuum of spirituality that as it comes closer from its edge where God's Spirit is resting till it gets to the rakia, it becomes more and more and more physical. So as it goes up towards the face, to the Spirit of God hovering over it, it's more and more spiritual. Okay. ועל דרך זה היו עד תום גבול חצי המים שכלפי מעלה. So it was, so from the Spirit of God and down, it was, as it approached the Ruach Elokim, it's yoter ruchaniyim, it's more and more spiritual. ועל דרך זה, and this way, right, היו עד תום גבול חצי המים שכלפי מעלה, it would go, travel all the way to the end of the border of the half of the water that is on top. However, the water underneath the firmament was physical water. That's what they refer to when they mean water within water. The drop of water that was between the upper and the lower, it had the quality of intermediary. It was a mimutze. It was more of like, it could be used as an interface. Shahaya bam, because in that drop, it had bechinat ruchaniyut me'ein shelamala mehen. It had the quality or the aspect of spirituality, which ultimately was, meaning that was shared with the waters above them. Ubechinat gashmiyut me'ein atachtonim, and it had an aspect of physicality akin to the waters underneath. Al kain, therefore, mimenen asa shamayim, and therefore that was used to fashion the heavens. Shehem geshem zach, which are, it's a very, very fine physicality, or even rain. Mimutza ben ruchaniyut lagashmiyut, and it's an intermediary between spirituality and physicality. So it seems what's emerging from the words of the Alshech is that essentially water, it has both these qualities, and God fashioned both spirituality and physicality from the water. And somehow part of the water was upgraded and part of the water was downgraded. But it's fascinating how it's all fashioned from water. Water is the medium here that has both qualities and yet defines like a dichotomy, an essential dichotomy built into Bria. So it's fascinating. I mean, we could think about it afterwards. And this is what the sages are referring to when they said that he revealed a drop from the middle and created the shamayim from it. That which was above, that were spiritual, that's why they are above the firmament. And as the separation, the difference that is between the waters of the abyss, which are underneath the firmament, so too that gap is to the nature of the upper waters. This is what the sages meant. That's what they had in mind when they said that the same amount of water that is above the firmament is the same amount which is below. So that last point, that it's in the middle, means, I believe, that it's referring to also not the size, but the nature and the relationship of those particular waters. So v'navo el inyan hakatuv. So now the Alshech wants to use this medrash and our understanding of it to explain the pasuk. V'hu ki lama shechetzi hamayim shahayu betchila letzad mala lo hayu me'echot shel mata. Why is it that the half of the water that was initially above, it was not of the same quality as the water below? Rak ruchaniyim, only that they were of a spiritual quality. V'zeh amra mayim b'mayim, what they referred to when they said water within water. Shahayu min mayim b'min mayim, there was a type of water that was within a type of water. Eila al eila, these above these, or these on these, upon these. V'kasher be'emtsa'an nivra harakia, and when between them the firmament was created, hivdil ben mayim lamayim, there was a separation between the two. V'nimtzo haruchaniyim lamal, and it turns out that water which had a spiritual nature ended up on top. Ve'al pi advar ma'elu yomar, and according to these words we can say ki hamayim shahayu tchila klape mal, the waters that were initially above, yikarei pnei hamayim, they will be called the face of the waters. So in this verse, when we say the face of the waters, we're referring to the spiritual waters. And on the face of the spiritual waters, meaning the upper edge, God's Spirit floated above. Just another, to your point, if you see so many times in the Psukim of Bereshit, Rashi says, Eina pasuk ba ela, right, to say darsheni. Meaning Rashi himself concedes that it's very difficult to find pshat in many of the psukim Bereshit. So you should ask Reb Gifter. Anyway, we can ask Reb Gifter La'asad Lavo, if he intended for his remarks to be apropos to Bereshit. Okay. V'hanisharim achrekein, and the leftover waters afterwards, which were not above the Rakia but rather below, yikareh et pneihem pnei tahom. So we characterize the primordial waters that become spiritual as mayim. Mayim is a name that still retains its spiritual character. However, the waters that became physical waters are now called the abyss. Ubazeh yiheh inyan hakatuv ki tohu vavo v'choshech, right? Emptiness and nothingness and darkness, haya al pnei tahom, were all on the face of the depths, meaning in the physical world. The physical world, right, was empty of form, substance, and light. Hu al pnei hamayim hatachtonim, that's on the face of the lower waters. However, v'ruach Elokim, the Spirit of God, shenahora imei sharei, that his light, the light of his dwells, or light dwells within him. This is a paraphrase of a pasuk in Daniel that says, I actually have it here. It says, Hu gila amukta umistarta yadei ma bechashucha unahora ime share. Unahora ime share means, and light dwells with him, that God has, meaning his essential light dwells with him. And when we say the Ruach Elokim, we're talking about God's light, that it dwells there on the face of the waters. Hayal pnei hamayim, shehu ala mayim shamei ala rakia. That's the waters above the rakia. Ve'al shalamata, and referring to the waters below, hu mashu hutzrich libarei or. And that is what demands the creation of light. Meaning, since we're talking about the physical world, the face of the depths, and that's where the emptiness and the nothingness and the darkness was, that demands the next pasuk that God's going to create light there, to illuminate that darkness. Shevayomer Elokim yihi yar, when God said there should be light, of the next verse. Ubidarkenu, and in our way of explaining, zeh, Efsher, it's possible, Yuvan Lashon Rashi, now we can understand the words of Rashi. She'omer al pnei tahom, he says on the face of the abyss. What does he say? Pnei hamayim, the face of the waters, she'al ha'aretz, that are above the earth. Okay? Shehuk shalo, because he could have asked on him, she'acha sheruach elokim rachaf al pnei hamayim. If the verse says that the Spirit of God is floating above the waters, echaya choshech, how could you say it was dark? I mean, the Spirit of God must be a very, very shiny, happy, bright thing. So now we understand that the tahom is referring to the water above the earth. Lo al pnei hamayim elyonim, not above the face of the upper waters. El al pnei tahom, but rather on the face of the abyss. Shehem pnei mayim hatachtonim velo nitztarech lomar, and it did not need to say shekivan al ma shebein hamayim la'aretz, that it intended to refer to that which is between the water above the earth, meaning the firmament, kasher shamati, like I have heard. I guess he heard people explaining it that way. Kisham ein makom lihitavot sham or. It doesn't make sense that the pasuk would be addressing the creation of the light, would be addressing that space, because there's no need for light over there in between. Okay, so it turns out from this that the Alshech is noting for us the creation of the essential natures of spirituality and physicality by separating the waters, which somehow incorporated both these elements in them. Okay.